What is up, guys? BK voiceover here, and welcome to part 1 of our 2023 offseason scenario series. So I did this series last offseason as well, before the start of free agency, back when I was just getting the channel started, and I figured I would do it again because I love going through potential offseason scenarios and going over what that could sort of entail. And like the last series I did it in the 2022 offseason, we're going to split this up into 5 parts. The first part is going to be an analysis of the 2023 depth chart as it stands right now. Part 2, we are going to look over the pending Seahawks free agents and go over which ones we are going to want to re-sign and which ones we're going to want to let walk. We're going to go over potential extensions, cuts, really anything that can potentially open up cap space for the Seattle Seahawks team, because even though we are set to have the 6th most cap space in the NFL, we also have a lot of pending free agents that are going to need to get re-signed. So, you're going to need to open up some cap space somewhere. Part 4, we're going to go over free agency and some free agent targets that I would like to see Seattle go after. And then last but not least, we're going to do our first mock draft of the off-season. First official mock draft of the off-season. There's only going to be one trade in that mock draft, and that is going to be for the Bears trading back, because there is no way they stay at pick 1. So that is kind of the basic structure of how this series is going to go. Before we go ahead and get started with part 1, like I said, is going to be the 2023 depth chart analysis. I would like you guys, if you like the content, you want to see more of it, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, just to show that I'm doing a good job, and so I can better this community, increase the size of this community, because I really enjoy talking with y'all amazing Seahawks fans and having that good football discussion and discourse. And yeah, it's fantastic to be able to talk with amazing Seahawks fans from all around the world. And then, of course, hit the bell icon if you want to be notified whenever I post. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, offseason has officially started for Seattle after we got, blown out in the second half of the 49ers Seahawks game. So we kind of have a good idea of what we need to focus on, what the roster looks like, and who is set to be free agents after the season. So let's take a look at the 2023 90-man roster as it stands right now, and then we are going to kind of go over what I think are the biggest needs of this team going into the offseason. Now, I know there's been plenty of talk from John Schneider, from Pete Carroll, saying, oh, well, we want to re-sign X player, we want to re-sign Y player. I'm looking at this team's needs, assuming we do not bring back anybody right now. I'm looking at the roster as it stands right now, not doing predictions of what it could be. So we will get started. First off, quarterbacks. We do not have any quarterbacks signed past this season. Both Geno Smith and Drew Lock are set to be unrestricted free agents after this season. So while John Schneider and Pete Carroll have said several times they would like to bring Geno back and that they would also like to bring Drew Lock back, until that becomes a thing, quarterback is going to be a very big need this offseason. I think it's pretty much a given at this point that it's not 100%, it's more like 90, 95%. I'm pretty sure that Geno is going to be back. The question is for how much and how long. Do they see him as their long-term guy, in which case I could see a 3, potentially 4-year extension. Otherwise, we don't see you as our long-term answer, but we'll bring you back for like 2 years and you can sort of coach up the rookie quarterback that you're going to be covering. Either way, quarterback right now is our biggest need on the roster, so we're going to need to take care of that as hopefully before free agency starts. Even if they don't have a long-term contract, I would fully expect them to throw the franchise tag on there, because at the very least that gives them room to negotiate a new deal from there. Moving on to the running back room. Running back room is in a little bit better shape. Kenneth Walker, obviously he took over the RB1 role when Rashad Penny went down with that leg injury in week 5, and he just went with it, and he's honestly the favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year this season. So I think that as far as the RB1 role goes, I think we're in pretty good shape as far as that's concerned. DJ Dallas also showed that he can be a decent RB2, RB3. And then we also re-signed Darwin Thompson to a futures deal / contract, but that doesn't really mean anything. It just means that, we want to keep you around for camp and you have a good chance of making the practice squad. That doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. Having said that, Seattle has Rashad Penny and running back Travis Homer set to be free agents after this season. I could see one of the two being brought back, but I think what's more likely is they're going to re-sign Rashad Penny, potentially. And they're going to let Homer walk, and I think they might end up using Derek Young in sort of that fullback, like, pass protection role. But as it stands now, Seattle needs at least two running backs, for sure. And a running back 2 behind Kenneth Walker, because he did struggle with injuries at points during the offseason. Or, sorry, not during the offseason. But during the regular season and during the preseason. So, yeah, I expect them to get 2 more. I expect them to re-sign one of Travis Homer or Rashad Penny. They might go and sign somebody else for cheap, or they might end up addressing it in the draft. I could see a couple of different options here. So, moving on to wide receiver. The top of the wide receiver room is in pretty good shape. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Your 1A, 1B, definitely a top 5 receiver duo in the NFL right now. So as far as your wide receiver 1 and 2 go, you're in really good shape. The problem is, again, Marquise Goodwin, who was a very pleasant surprise last season. He is also a free agent. He had 27 catches for 387 yards and 4 touchdowns this past season. Definitely improvement over the previous year, but he's also going to be 33. There's no guarantee that he re-signs with Seattle. I could expect them to bring him back, but as it stands right now, a good wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4 right now is very important, especially with D. Eskridge massively disappointing again. Didn't really do much on the field. He made a ton of very crucial mistakes, and then got injured and got put on injured reserve at the end of the year. So he's not the guy. D. Eskridge is a bust. I don't see him being anything for this team going forward. Derek Young flashed at points. He was primarily a blocker, but he got more use in the receiving game at the end of the season, as well as in playoff games. So I could see Derek Young having a role going forward. But going out and getting a couple of more wide receivers could be a very crucial point of this offseason, whether that's in free agency or in the draft, or re-signing Marquise Goodwin. I'm all for that. Seattle also did sign 3 players to futures contracts. 2 of them I don't expect much from, but one of them, Cade Johnson, he's actually played fairly well in his limited snaps at the end of the season and in the playoff game against the 49ers, so I could see Cade Johnson potentially having a role on this team going forward. I was a big fan of him when we got him as an undrafted free agent in 2021, so I hope they're able to find a role for him. Tight end, not a whole heck of a lot to write home about. I would say the tight end room, for the most part, is pretty much set. Going for next season, Noah Fant is going into the 5th year of his rookie contract. We did sign his 5th year option, so he's going into the final year of his deal. Will Dissly, he signed a contract last offseason, so he's under contract for the next 2 seasons. And then Colby Parkinson is going into the last year of his deal. There is a scenario in which Will Dissly ends up getting cut, or just because he has a pretty big cap hit, you can save a decent chunk of cash if you let him go. In which case, I could see Seattle potentially going and drafting a tight end. But I don't expect that to be the case. Will Dissly was good last season, so I don't expect them to move on from him. So yeah, I think the tight end room is pretty much set for the most part. Same with the tackles. Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas were fantastic this year. I mean, obviously they had their mistakes. Cross definitely looked a little bit more raw than I think a lot of us were expecting. But again, he's young. It was his first year playing in NFL defense, and a lot of these like high-profile tackles and linemen really see a big jump in year 2, and I kind of expect to see that for Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. They were left on islands a lot this year, but yeah. As far as the backups go, Stone Forsythe was okay. in limited like backup roles and as a swing tackle as well. Same with Curhan. Curhan was okay. Again, he's a great run blocker. He's a terrible pass blocker though. So you could make an argument maybe you want to move on from Curhan this offseason. But I don't think that's as big of a deal. Also, Greg Island and Jalen McKenzie got signed to futures deals. Greg Island, more of a left tackle. He can also play a little bit of guard. Jalen McKenzie, we didn't really get a chance to see him play at all. Taking a look at our guard spots, Damian Lewis, he came in off of year 2 where he got moved to left guard and looked terrible. And in his 3rd year, he's stuck at left guard, and he actually played very well. I think that it just took a little bit of getting used to, but I think that he could be a long-term starter at left guard for sure. He is going into the last year of his rookie deal. And I definitely think that we'll need some more depth there, but I think at this point, Damian Lewis is your starter at left guard. I would say 3 of the 5 offensive line positions are pretty much set at this point. And Cross, Lewis at left guard, and then Abraham Lucas at right tackle. Right guard, on the other hand, this could be a problem. Gabe Jackson is still under contract. This is the last year of his deal. But at the same time, he has a big cap hit this year, and he has some sort of knee problem going on where he was barely even playing like half the snaps. He was having to shift out with Phil Haynes like for a good chunk of the season because he couldn't finish games. So I fully expect Seattle to move on from Gabe Jackson this offseason, and if so, Seattle is going to have to go out and find a replacement for Gabe Jackson, whether that's re-signing Phil Haynes, drafting a guard, or potentially going big in free agency. There's a lot of decent guards that are going to be available for you to go out and get in free agency. So yeah, lots of potential options here. I would bring back Phil Haynes on a cheap deal, but he's had a lot of injury problems in his young career, so I would not bring him back and trust him to start. So yeah, center though, oh my god. Seattle has a bad habit of massively undervaluing the center position, and it has come back to bite us in the ass on numerous occasions this past year, for sure. Austin Blythe was one of the worst centers in the NFL. He was just getting thrown around there by even middling talent on the interior defensive lines. We haven't had like a stud center since Max Unger, and it has really shown. I think Seattle doesn't address this in free agency. I think they absolutely address this in the draft, or at the very least they should address this in the draft. Because his performance wasn't it, and the only center you have under contract right now is Joey Hunt, who is on a futures deal. And we got an up close and personal experience of what Joey Hunt looks like at center, and it was not good. So yeah, let's hope he is playing center for us only in a practicing capacity. All right, so that covers the offense. Moving on to the defense. We have Shelby Harris, or taking a look at nose tackle, we have Al Woods and Brian Monet. And I have this as a tier 2 or a high need. And that's because Al Woods, getting up there a bit in age, he was struggling with an Achilles injury for towards the end of last season. And Brian Monet just had his entire knee explode, like damage to his ACL. There's also some other serious damage to his knee. So it happened so late in the season, there's a very good chance that he doesn't play a single snap for you next season. There is a good chance he doesn't play a single snap in the NFL ever again, and I see it very likely that Seattle will move on from at least one, but probably both Al Woods and Brian Monet. I wouldn't be shocked if Al Woods retired. I mean, he's going to be 36, I think. 36 next season. So I fully expect Seattle to get younger at the position, so that's why I have a high need on this. Defensive end, I think Shelby Harris is going to stay with the team. I think he's going to get a restructure. Or no, he's going into the last year. He can't be restructured. But I think he'll likely agree to a new either a contract extension, or he'll potentially get cut and re-signed. But I expect Shelby Harris to be back next season in some capacity. I don't expect Quentin Jefferson to be back. And we also have Poona Ford as a free agent. LJ Collier is a free agent. Miles Adams is an exclusive rights free agent. But either way, we should be looking to massively overhaul this defensive line because it was one of the worst defensive lines in the entire NFL last season. It was getting gashed in the run game. It couldn't rush the passer effectively. So don't be surprised if there's a big shakeup on this defensive line. We have to get better. We have to get a lot better than what we are. So yeah, I fully expect Quentin Jefferson to be gone. Gerard Hewitt also got signed to a futures deal, but he's a practice squatter at best. Moving on to the linebacking room, outside linebacker / pass rusher. I think this room is in a lot better position than a lot of people think. Both Uchenna Nwosu and Darrell Taylor finished the season with 9.5 sacks on the year. Darrell Taylor really came on in the second half of the season after starting off very, very, very slow. Boye Mafe had an underwhelming year rushing the passer, but he was pretty good in run defense. I think he's going to take a big step in year 2. Alton Robinson also missed the entire season last year with a knee injury. Tyreek Smith the same. He missed his entire rookie season with a hip injury. So, not only that, you have your top 3 guys who last year combined for 22 sacks. And then you have 2 young guys who missed the entire season with injury that you don't really know what they're going to bring to the table. So, yeah, I think that at best maybe you bring in, maybe you draft a guy day 2, day 3. Maybe Alton Robinson's knee condition is worse than we thought, and maybe they might move on from him. But I think if you can get like a really good pass rusher for good value in the draft, I think you go get him. But I wouldn't sell out to address like your edge rusher position. I think the majority of the work needs to be done on the interior. Inside linebacker, on the other hand, that is a position that is going to need a lot of work going forward. We re-signed Chris Garrett. I don't even know who that is. We signed him to a practice squad deal at the end of the year. I don't know anything about him. And then we also have Jordan Brooks, who is going into the last year of his rookie deal, assuming he doesn't get the 5th-year option exercised on his contract. And honestly, with a torn ACL, there's a very good chance that he'll miss the start of next season, in which case you have no other linebackers signed. I see Seattle re-signing a couple of their free agents to the linebacker room, but I also see them targeting this in free agency as well as the draft. Lots of very intriguing options. In free agency, the draft is kind of bare as far as top-end inside linebackers go, but I could see them spending a day 2 pick on a linebacker for sure. Moving over to the corner room. Corner room is looking actually not half bad. Tariq Woolen is obviously going to be one of your starters next season. Kobe Bryant, you still have. He was a passable nickel for us last season, so I fully expect him to, if not be in the slot, at least be on the outside next to Woolen, or at least compete for one of those spots. Trey Brown missed a good chunk of the year recovering from a knee injury. And he didn't really get to see the field a whole heck of a lot. He was just outplayed the vast majority of the time. And so, justifiably, they didn't play him a whole heck of a lot. Then we also have Isaiah Dunn. He's primarily a practice squatter. We got him off waivers at the start of the season, who finished the season on IR. And then Chris Steele, who was a practice squatter we signed at the very end of the season that we decided to bring back. So the corner room, I think the top is, at least with Woolen, is great. Trey Brown, Kobe Bryant, a bit unproven. I think you're definitely going to need to add to this room, whether that's re-signing your own free agents or also going to the draft and getting guys from other teams. So definitely a position Seattle could target. Next up, you got free safety and strong safety. Just contract-wise, I do not see them moving on from Diggs or Jamal Adams this offseason. I think they're both set as your starters. So, if they're your starters, assuming they have a healthy season, unfortunately Jamal Adams missed the whole season with a quad tendon injury, pretty much. Your starters are set. So the question is depth. Ryan Neal's a free agent. I fully see them bringing him back in some capacity. I could see them spending a draft pick on another DB here too. So, as far as special teams go, Seattle went out and they re-signed Jason Myers to an extension before free agency, which is great. Michael Dixon's already under contract. The only thing we have left is a long snapper, Tyler Ott, who has been our long snapper for the past few years. He he missed a lot of time with, I think he had like a dislocated his shoulder, so he ended up missing the whole season. Or not the whole season, but pretty much the entire season. And then Carson Tinker, we got him in as a free agent. He came in and basically filled in for him the entire season. So I could see them bringing back either of them. It's a long snapper, doesn't particularly matter. But yeah, so in total, Seattle has 44 players signed to its 2023 90-man roster. I fully expect that to go up at least in the next little bit. Next episode, we will go and take a look at the pending Seahawks free agents and take a look at which guys we want to bring back, which guys we want to let walk going forward to help reinforce this squad. So without further ado, that's going to be the end of part 1. So thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to like the video and hit the subscribe button if you like the content and want to see more, and hit the bell icon to be notified every time I post. So with that, y'all have a great rest of your weekend, and as always, go Hawks.